Hi, I'm Elizabeth Montgomery with a word to mothers about two new serials from Quaker. And they are absolutely extraordinary people. And if they're watching, hi. Elizabeth Montgomery wasn't only another television star, she was the embodiment of magic during the 1960s. A wiggle of her nose, and she made millions of people laugh and believe in the improbable. Off camera, though, all wasn't as rosy as on. Elizabeth had a knack for keeping her personal life just that. Personal. Even when she died in 1995, talks whirled about her life, her decisions, and the things she never would discuss on camera. And now, 30 years on, something remarkable has occurred. Her children, who have remained silent for decades, are finally speaking out. And what they've said has left even her largest supporters in shock. Early life and career. Elizabeth Montgomery was born on the 15th of April, 1933 in Los Angeles, California, to a showbiz background. Her father, Robert Montgomery, was an established film actor, and her mother, Elizabeth Daniel Bryan Allen, was also a Broadway star. Showbiz ran in the family from early on. Elizabeth had two children, an older sister, who unfortunately passed away as an infant, and a younger brother named Robert Jr. Her ancestry was a combination of Irish and Scottish, and one of her great-grandfathers traveled from Belfast, Ireland. As a young girl, Elizabeth attended the Westlake School for Girls in California and the Spence School in New York City. She was serious about her dreams and spent 3 years at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in Manhattan, training for what would be a long and intriguing career. Before long, she debuted on Broadway in Late Love in 1953 and received compliments for the performance. The same talent then got her into movies such as The Court Martial of Billy Mitchell, 1955, and Johnny Cool, 1963, where she starred with leading talents such as Henry Silva, Dean Martin, and Carol Burnett. Television was where Elizabeth truly came into her own. She appeared on such hit series as Studio One, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, The Twilight Zone, and The Untouchables, recording an Emmy nomination in 1960 for one of her appearances. By the early 60s, she was a household name on the tube. Then along came the role that cemented her place in the home, Samantha Stevens in the beloved sitcom, Bewitched. Elizabeth appeared as the endearing witch who attempted to lead a normal suburban existence with her mortal husband from 1964 until 1972. The show was an enormous success and one of ABC's top-rated programs during its time. Audiences were captivated not only by Samantha, but also by Serena, Samantha's playmate and troublemaker cousin, also played by Montgomery using the playful pseudonym Pandora Spox. During the run of the show, Elizabeth received 5 Emmy nominations and 4 Golden Globe nominations. Beneath the surface, however, things were not so smooth. Her marriage to the director of the show, William Asher, was on shaky ground, and by the conclusion of Bewitched's 8th season, the two had divorced. While ABC wanted to keep the show going into a 9th season, the tension between them made it impossible. Instead, Elizabeth and Asher pitched the network a new series, The Paul Lynde Show, which only survived for 1 season. Following Bewitched, Elizabeth labored to escape her witchy persona. She performed in more dramatic roles, proving to the world that there was more to her than Samantha. She amazed audiences with her dramatic performances in A Case of Rape and The Legend of Lizzie Borden, which netted her additional Emmy nominations. And she even learned, via a genealogist, that she was remotely related to Lizzie Borden, the character she played on television. Elizabeth went on performing through the 70s and 80s, working on TV movies, miniseries, and even voicing characters on animated television. No matter if she was playing a gruff detective, an evil nurse, or a struggling frontier woman, she always brought her roles, depth, and emotion. She also made numerous guest appearances on game shows such as Password, where she became known as the Queen of Password by host Alan Ludden. From beginning to end, Elizabeth Montgomery crafted a career of bounding in magic, mystery, and lasting moments on and off screen. Elizabeth Montgomery made her debut on Robert Montgomery Presents. Even though the relationship between Elizabeth Montgomery and her father, Robert Montgomery, was stormy, she was able to make her acting debut on his TV show, Robert Montgomery Presents. This was only the beginning of 30 episodes she would go on to appear on the series. To Elizabeth at the time, this was a huge opportunity. She exclaimed, "It was the chance I had been waiting for. I thought it was made for me, because who would be able to give more to the part than an actual daughter?" Elizabeth auditioned for the role, along with around a dozen other actors, but she got the role. As the air date of the show approached, everyone involved was getting a little anxious. To try to relax her, Robert summoned Elizabeth to his dressing room for a final pep talk. She reassured him that all was well, although she acknowledged that she was shaking with fear. "I don't know if he could see that I was shaking from head to toe," she said. When filming time arrived, however, Elizabeth concentrated. Once cameras began rolling, she had no difficulty focusing on her part. The show went well, and Elizabeth's screen debut was successful. Though the personal struggles with her father existed, this experience was the starting point of her career, and she would grow up to become a popular and successful actress. Personal life. Elizabeth Montgomery's personal life was just as fascinating as her time on screen. Over the years, she experienced love, heartbreak, motherhood, and a few twists that would rival any drama. Let's take a stroll through her romantic journey and family life, all while giving you a peek behind the scenes of the woman who played the unforgettable Samantha Stevens. In 1954, Elizabeth married her first husband, Frederick Gallatin Kamen, a wealthy socialite from New York City. But that marriage didn't last long. They split up in less than a year. Just a couple of years later, she tied the knot with actor Gig Young, who had won an Academy Award. That marriage lasted longer, from 1956 to 1963, but it eventually ended too. Later in 1963, Elizabeth married again, this time to director and producer William Asher. Their relationship would turn out to be both personal and professional. Asher directed Bewitched, the hit show that turned Elizabeth into a household name. The two worked closely on the series and even had 3 children together, William, Robert, and Rebecca. Interestingly, when Elizabeth was pregnant with Robert and Rebecca, the writers of Bewitched cleverly wrote those pregnancies into the show, making Samantha's magical journey feel even more real to viewers. But all wasn't perfect behind the scenes. During the 8th and final season of Bewitched, Elizabeth began a relationship with Richard Michaels, one of the show's directors. Their affair led to both of their marriages ending, Elizabeth's with Asher and Richard's with his wife. The affair also played a part in bringing the show to an end. After the series wrapped up in 1972, Elizabeth and Richard moved in together, and they stayed in a relationship for about 2.5 years. Years later, Elizabeth found lasting companionship with actor Robert Foxworth. They had a steady, committed relationship for nearly 2 decades before they eventually married in 1993. While she was living with Foxworth, though, there were whispers that she had a brief affair with Russian ballet dancer and actor Alexander Godanov. Though the details around that are murky, it adds one more layer to the very full, very human story of her personal life. Beyond her love life, Elizabeth had a special connection to a quiet little town in New York. Paterson in Putnam County was home to the Montgomery family homestead. She spent many childhood summers there, enjoying the peace and charm of the countryside. Fans of Bewitched might remember Paterson being mentioned quite a few times on the show. Those nods were Elizabeth's way of honoring a place that meant a lot to her. Later on, her mother lived in the family's old farmhouse on Cushman Road. keeping the Montgomery connection to Patterson alive. Elizabeth's personal life was full of ups and downs, just like anyone else's. But through it all, marriages, motherhood, relationships, and memories, she remained grounded, passionate about her work, and deeply connected to the people and places that shaped her. Marriages and divorces impacted the father and daughter. Elizabeth Montgomery had a troubled relationship with her father, Robert Montgomery, particularly after his 1950 divorce. Robert Montgomery, a famous actor himself, had been married to Elizabeth Allen for a long time before he divorced her. He married a woman named Elizabeth Buffy Hercules soon after the divorce, and it is thought that this second marriage pained Elizabeth, his daughter. As per writer Herbie J. Pilato, Elizabeth never quite forgave her father for divorcing her mother and marrying so soon again. Others even propose that Elizabeth's initial marriage was a means of coping with her troubled relationship with her father. In 1954, Elizabeth wed Fred Kamen, a wealthy New York high roller whom she met while working on her father's television show. Their marriage, however, was brief. Elizabeth wished to pursue her career, but Fred wanted her to be a stay-at-home wife. They divorced after only 1 year. Pilato is also correct in stating that Elizabeth's separation from Kamen caused tension between her and her father. As Kamen was from high society, Robert Montgomery is said to have disapproved of the split. This tense father-daughter relationship dominated Elizabeth's life and had a strong influence on her personal and professional life. Queen of the TV movies. In the period from 1972 to 1995, Elizabeth Montgomery starred in more than 2 decades of television movies, each representing another stage of her professional life. Among these films, 2 are exceptionally important, both professionally and personally. She played in Mrs. Sundance, a continuation of the hit movie Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid in 1973. It was here that she became acquainted with actor Robert Foxworth. The two fell in love very soon, and they remained together until the time of her death, although it wasn't until 1993 that they exchanged vows. The two were connected by a strong and enduring love affair, which, according to Elizabeth, was the only one she had truly waited for her entire life. Montgomery had a distinctly different role in 1975's The Legend of Lizzie Borden, in which she portrayed Lizzie, accused of killing her parents in 1892. This was far from her highly recognized role as Samantha in Bewitched, and it was a reflection of her skill as an actress. Both viewers and critics noticed her capacity to transform into such a rich character, which was a major turn in her career, and showed that she was capable of more than being her iconic television character. Her death, Elizabeth Montgomery, battled a serious illness in her later years of life. She was diagnosed with colon cancer, but the symptoms were overlooked until it was too late. During the filming of Deadline for Murder from the Files of Edna Buchanan in March of 1995, she started showing flu-like symptoms, but powered through to get the job done. By the time physicians diagnosed her, the cancer had metastasized from her colon to her liver, rendering recovery impossible. Even with the dire diagnosis, Elizabeth decided to spend her final days in the comfort of her Beverly Hills home, where she resided with her partner, Robert Foxworth. She did not want to die in a hospital and would rather be among loved ones. Elizabeth died on the morning of May 18, 1995, at the age of 62. Foxworth and her 3 children from her first marriage to William Asher were with her when she died. She was cremated after her death. A memorial service took place on June 18, 1995, at the Cannon Theater in Beverly Hills, 1 month following her death. The service included music by Herbie Hancock, a reading by Amanda McBroom, and a eulogy by Dominic Dunn, a close friend. Foxworth read from numerous sympathy cards from fans and other relatives, including her daughter and brother, gave testimonials, and spoke about Elizabeth. Prior to her death, Elizabeth had maintained her parents' residence in Paterson, New York. The home, situated in Putnam County, was significant to her life, and upon her death, the estate was sold and became part of Wonder Lake State Park some 3 years later. Her legacy lives on through her legendary role in Bewitched, and the influence she exerted on her fans, family, and friends. Political activism. Elizabeth Montgomery wasn't only a gifted actress, she was also a dedicated activist who believed strongly in using her fame, money, and time to make the world a better place. Off-screen, she actively worked to promote many causes close to her heart. Elizabeth was a strong believer in equality and fairness. She advocated for women's rights and animal rights, and was a huge supporter of the LGBTQ+ community way before it became fashionable in Hollywood. She also spoke up for HIV/AIDS victims and victims of AIDS at a time when the subject matter was commonly glossed over or not understood. She was never hesitant to advocate for the voices of those who didn't always have a voice, and that only made her all the more lovable to her audience. Politically, Elizabeth was liberal and not afraid to admit it. She opposed the Vietnam War and was a supporter of Robert F. Kennedy when he campaigned for president in 1968. Subsequently, in 1988, she and her longtime partner, Robert Foxworth, openly supported Jesse Jackson's presidential campaign. Elizabeth didn't merely support these causes in an abstract sense. She became engaged. She utilized her voice and public platform to create actual discussions and effect change. She also provided voice for strong documentaries challenging U.S. foreign policy. She narrated Cover Up, Behind the Iran-Contra Affair in 1988, and The Panama Deception in 1992, which even received an Academy Award. These documentaries weren't hesitant to question the government, and Elizabeth felt honored to be a part of them. One of her most special moments came in 1992 when she was joined by her good friend and former Bewitched co-star Dick Sargent as co-Grand Marshal of the Los Angeles Gay Pride Parade. It was a significant and courageous gesture and illustrative of how much she loved and cared about the LGBTQ community. Elizabeth Montgomery lived with intention. On screen and off, she was committed to using her position to stand up for justice, equality, and compassion. And that's a large reason why she's still admired and revered today. Rumored feud with Barbara Eden. For years, people thought that Elizabeth Montgomery and Barbara Eden from I Dream of Jeannie had a secret feud going on. The two series were similar. Both featured magical females as the lead characters, and both were produced during the same time period on the same Hollywood studio backlot. Due to this, the fans and even the press liked to fantasize that the two actresses didn't like each other. But in reality, that was not the case. Barbara Eden dispelled the rumors once and for all in a 2013 interview. She explained that there was never any actual tension between her and Elizabeth Montgomery. They got along very well. They would often talk on set, and even exchanged personal anecdotes, particularly because they were pregnant simultaneously, which provided them with something to share in common. As Eden put it, any story of a feud was simply something producers and the media fabricated to make their shows more dramatic and get attention. Actress Sally Field, who also worked on the lot, did remember one amusing tidbit. She said that Elizabeth Montgomery occasionally got a little irritated with Barbara Eden's singing on location, but that was a tiny personal thing and not an issue. There was never any sign of actual bad blood between the two ladies. Ultimately, the reported feud existed only as that, a rumor. Both of these women worked hard and enjoyed each other's skills. This notion that they were adversaries was merely a scenario of Hollywood hearsay running rampant. It is comforting to note that in private, these two actresses were plain women, simply doing their thing and laughing with each other, not competitors competing for attention. Controversial remark about first husband. One of the more interesting and widely discussed anecdotes from Elizabeth Montgomery's early life is found in actor Griffin Dunn's memoir, The Friday Afternoon Club. In the memoir, Dunn recalled a childhood memory featuring Montgomery, who, by the way, was his babysitter at the time. Yes, before she was a household name on TV, Elizabeth Montgomery was tending to young Griffin Dunn. In the account, Dunn remembers one occasion that has stayed with him all these years, not because it was sweet and amusing, but because it was quite shocking. From his telling when Montgomery changed his diaper as a baby, he offered a very graphic and inappropriate comment, contrasting baby Griffin's anatomy to that of his then-husband, Frederick Gallatin Cammon. It was intended as a joke, but it certainly made eyebrows rise, particularly when the story later broke. Montgomery's marriage to Cammon was very brief. They wed in 1954, but divorced within less than a year. This abrupt breakup has long been somewhat of an enigma, but Dunn's tale adds an interesting twist. It suggests that Montgomery might have had profound discontentment in the marriage, and she wasn't afraid to show it, even in a quirky manner. The remark itself might not have been meant to be mean-spirited, but it revealed something significant about Montgomery's character. She was notorious for being blunt, fearless, and willing to speak her mind, even if what she had to say wasn't always deemed proper. What, in Hollywood, where actors are usually guarded about how they're perceived, Montgomery's bluntness was a departure. Of course, this moment was shared years later through Griffin Dunn's adult perspective, so some details may have been exaggerated or taken out of context. Still, the remark became a notable anecdote in discussions about Montgomery's personal life and her famously short first marriage. Ultimately, the narrative fails to describe what she was like, but does hint at her uncensored and sometimes tart wit. Something perhaps discernible as one of the aspects of making her so appealing on screen to the fans of Bewitched, criticism of the sisters at heart. Episode 1 of the most popular episodes of Bewitched was called Sisters at Heart Tertet. This was a special episode in many ways. To start with, it was written by a team of African-American high school students at Los Angeles Jefferson High School. That itself made it stand out and was special. The episode addressed the sensitive issue of racial prejudice, something that sitcoms did not see much of during the early 1970s. In the episode, Samantha's daughter Tabitha befriends a black girl named Lisa when another character makes a racist remark, implying that they can't be real sisters because they don't look alike. Samantha employs her magical powers to get everyone to see that love and friendship are more important than the color of one's skin. The episode attempted to spread a strong message that racism is bad, and what is most important is what is inside. The episode was widely acclaimed and even won the highly coveted Governor's Award at the 1971 Emmy Awards, which is a huge honor. A lot of people were impressed with Bewitched for breaking out of its typical, light-hearted magical plot lines and addressing such a serious and topical issue. But not everyone was fond of the episode. Some critics complained that the message was too sappy and simplistic. They said that how the show addressed racism was a little too idealistic and didn't explore deeply enough the actual complex problems people of color encounter in real life. In short, even though the heart was in the right place, the execution seemed too tidy and magical to some. Nevertheless, Elizabeth Montgomery was a staunch supporter of the episode. Indeed, she referred to Sisters at Heart as her favorite episode of Bewitched. She adored its theme of love, equality, and understanding. To her, employing the show to encourage kindness and stand up against prejudice was more significant than critics' reactions. Montgomery's endorsement of the episode also demonstrated who she was behind the scenes, a dedicated supporter of civil rights and social issues. Sisters at Heart was not ideal, perhaps, but it was a courageous move for a mainstream television show of its era. It was indicative of Montgomery's ideals and her vision that television could be employed to create change. Her charitable work. Elizabeth Montgomery showed her larger-than-life spirit even in her last year alive, volunteering time to assist others. She devoted time to assisting the Los Angeles chapter of Learning Ally, a nonprofit organization that produces audiobooks for the disabled. These audiobooks assist those with difficulty reading due to eye difficulties, learning disabilities, or other disabilities, and Elizabeth felt fortunate to be able to serve something so meaningful. Not only did she give her time, but she also leveraged her celebrity status to raise awareness for the cause. In 1994, she assisted in producing several radio and television public service announcements to promote Learning Ally's mission. She wanted more individuals to be aware of what they were doing and to urge others to support or become involved. In January of 1995, only months before she died, Elizabeth made a special recording of A. Mills, When We Were Very Young, a children's classic first released in 1952. It was only one more way in which she continued to give back, sharing her legendary voice to make others happy and comforted. After her death, Learning Ally wished to pay tribute to Elizabeth's compassion and devotion. On June 3, 1995, only 16 days after she had died, they dedicated their yearly record-a-thon event to her memory. It was a moving tribute to someone who had sacrificed so much of herself, even in the last months of her life. To make the dedication even more meaningful, 21 other celebrities lent their voices to record a rendition of Chicken Soup for the Soul, a compilation of inspirational stories. This audiobook, too, was dedicated to Elizabeth to commemorate her spirit of giving and the love that she had for serving others. Even after her passing, Elizabeth Montgomery's legacy of compassion and service continued to inspire. What her children revealed. Rumor that Elizabeth Montgomery secretly gave birth before she achieved fame has lingered for years, fascinating her fans and arousing controversy. Her children refuted this rumor-mongering in a revealing interview in 2025 and cleared the air about a situation long surrounded by intrigue. As per the interview, Montgomery had given birth to a child during her formative years, a fact which was kept concealed owing to the societal pressures and expectations of those times. Keeping this information confidential was motivated by fear of harming her growing career and the resultant effects on her public image. The news was corroborated by records and personal letters that came to light, highlighting Montgomery's life and troubles. The materials added substance and context to her private life and presented a better picture of the actress beyond her public persona. Her children shared a wish to relate this part of their mother's life, to pay tribute to her memory, and give a clearer vision of who she was. They made it clear that Montgomery's choice was done with love and a need to protect her family and career. This honest revelation has been received with compassion and admiration by the public and fans who respect the intricacies of Montgomery's life and her resilience in managing them. Elizabeth Montgomery's existence was marked by both professional and personal issues, but it's evident she left her own stamp on the world. Being raised in Hollywood by a famous father, she was under a tremendous amount of pressure from the very start. Even though her father, Robert Montgomery, was often strained in his relationship with her, she created her own path in the field. Her career truly soared when she was cast as Samantha in Bewitched. The series was a huge hit, and she became a household name. But fame was not all that Elizabeth had going for her. Behind the scenes, Elizabeth had a difficult time. Her private life was one of tangled relationships, such as several marriages and divorces. Her first marriage to Frederick Common lasted only 1 year because they had envisioned their life together differently. She later fell in love with Robert Foxworth, and while they didn't wed until 1993, he was a stabilizing influence and source of happiness for her. Elizabeth also struggled with the stress of being in the limelight. A strong advocate for many causes, among them women's rights and animal rights, she used every endeavor to make an impact on the world. She also struggled with personal issues, such as her mental health. Elizabeth's children have revealed how she used to hide things from them to shield them, demonstrating how much she put her family first. Through all the obstacles, Elizabeth was still a favorite. She proved to the world that even the most enchanted characters on television can lead intricate, real lives with challenges. Her legacy is one of ability, determination, and overcoming difficulty, making her story one of both inspiration and identification. Thanks for watching with us as we got into the interesting life of Elizabeth Montgomery. If you liked this in-depth look at her life, don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you can catch up on all of our future videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.